Cheating millionaire with Mistress sees pregnant wife, preparing for their baby, realizes too late. Andrew Harrington was the kind of man who seemed to have it all: success, wealth, and the adoration of the business world. He was living the high life in a Manhattan penthouse, throwing lavish parties and indulging in the most exclusive experiences money could buy. But behind the polished facade, Andrew's personal life was in shambles. His once devoted wife, Sarah, had finally walked away, pregnant and broken-hearted after discovering his infidelity. Now, with the child's due date approaching, Andrew stumbles upon Sarah's quiet preparations and realizes, in a brutal moment of clarity, just how much he has truly lost. He's about to learn that not all fortunes can be bought back. Andrew Harrington was born into a world of privilege. His father, James Harrington, was a real estate mogul who owned prime properties up and down the East Coast, while his mother, Margaret, graced society columns with her lavish charity galas. Andrew was given every advantage money could buy: elite private schools, personal tutors, tennis lessons at exclusive country clubs, and summers abroad. Even as a child, he was often reminded that the Harrington name carried weight like no other, that he was expected to shine in every room he entered. From an early age, Andrew learned to charm his way through life. He knew exactly when to flash a confident smile or deliver a polished compliment. Yet beneath the veneer, he craved a sense of individuality that was overshadowed by his family's prominence. For years, he simply enjoyed the fruits of his parents' wealth and clout, drifting through life with the casual entitlement of someone who believed everything would always be handed to him. It wasn't until he met Sarah Bennett that he realized the emptiness of that approach. Sarah came from a hard-working family in Queens, the daughter of Robert Bennett, a taxi driver, and Linda Bennett, a house cleaner. From a young age, she witnessed her parents' sacrifices just to keep a modest roof over their heads. She grew up determined to carve a better future for herself and for them through relentless focus on education and personal integrity. When she finally crossed paths with Andrew during a community outreach program in college, their worlds, so starkly different, collided in ways neither could have predicted. Sarah Bennett had always been driven. Her father's grueling hours behind the wheel of a taxi and her mother's back-breaking cleaning jobs instilled in her a fiery resolve. She was determined to make something of herself, to repay her parents' efforts with a life they could be proud of. Despite financial obstacles, Sarah thrived academically, earning scholarships that brought her into elite educational circles typically reserved for the wealthy. Yet Sarah's ambition was paired with a kindness that drew people in. Whether she was tutoring struggling classmates or organizing food drives for underprivileged communities, she believed in the power of empathy. Her path intersected with Andrew Harrington's at a university initiative matching business students with community leaders to develop philanthropic strategies. She initially dismissed Andrew as just another privileged heir ticking a box on his resume, but as she spent time with him, she noticed a glimmer of sincerity behind his polished exterior, a longing to break free from the golden cage of expectation. Andrew, for his part, found Sarah's intelligence and compassion irresistible. She asked incisive questions about his life and ambitions, looking beyond his last name. For once, Andrew felt seen for who he was rather than what he represented. Their romance developed over shared projects, long conversations about social impact, and evenings spent quietly poring over business plans that could do more good than harm. Andrew began to imagine a future beyond the glossy events of Manhattan's elite, and Sarah found a softer side of him that wasn't apparent at first glance. By the time they graduated, Andrew was hopelessly in love with Sarah. He admired her no-nonsense approach to life and her unwavering moral compass. Sarah, though cautious, grew to trust Andrew's evolving sense of purpose. He began distancing himself from the more frivolous aspects of his upbringing, channeling his inherited resources into charitable ventures with Sarah's guidance. Tongues started wagging in Andrew's social circle. Friends who had known him only as a fun-loving heir wondered why he would settle down with someone outside their privileged sphere. Sarah, too, faced skeptical looks from people who assumed she was a gold digger or social climber. Undeterred, they found strength in each other. Their bond deepened as they navigated these conflicts together. Andrew introduced Sarah to his parents with some trepidation. Margaret Harrington was polite but distant, treating Sarah like a guest to be vetted. James Harrington, known for his pragmatic approach, sized her up as well, trying to figure out if she would help Andrew flourish or become a liability. At an opulent charity gala, where Sarah felt out of place among the glittering gowns and priceless diamonds, she found herself stepping in to help serve drinks when the staff was short-handed and conversing warmly with guests who seemed overshadowed by the evening's grandeur. Margaret watched with silent intrigue, beginning to realize that Sarah might actually belong by Andrew's side. Later that night, under the estate's lush garden lights, Andrew presented Sarah with a small velvet box. She gasped, tears welling up as he knelt and asked her to be his wife. Despite the social hurdles, despite the endless whispers, they were certain that nothing could come between the love they shared. Their wedding took place at the Harrington family estate, perched gracefully above the Hudson River. The ceremony was an unusual blend of extravagance and intimacy. A world-renowned string quartet played for the select group of high-profile guests, yet the vows were so deeply personal that it felt as if Andrew and Sarah were alone under the altar's floral canopy. A local pastor from Sarah's childhood officiated, weaving a poignant message about unity across different walks of life. For the first year, their marriage felt like a fairy tale. Andrew launched Harrington Ventures, a boutique investment firm dedicated to socially responsible portfolios, a concept he had long discussed with Sarah. While Andrew dealt with the business side, Sarah threw her energy into charitable work, leveraging her business acumen to help smaller, non-profits thrive. They appeared in glossy magazines, touted as the new power couple who blended wealth with genuine goodwill. Behind closed doors, however, pressures loomed. Harrington Ventures grew at a breathtaking pace, attracting an elite clientele with complex, demanding interests. Andrew found himself juggling nightly networking events and jet-setting to international conferences. Sarah, equally busy but differently so, dedicated her days to philanthropic boards and community outreach. The couple's once intimate evenings transformed into phone calls from distant cities or dinners where Andrew's phone buzzed incessantly with client demands. Though they tried to preserve their bond, Sarah sensed Andrew slipping into the very world he had once shunned. He assured her it was all for their shared future, that once the firm stabilized, he would slow down. She wanted to believe him. Little did they know that seeds of discord had already been planted, waiting to unravel the life they had built. Late-night office meetings, exclusive club appearances, and endless schmoozing became part of Andrew's daily routine. Although he insisted it was necessary to keep the business afloat, Sarah worried about the gradual changes she saw. Andrew's moral resolve seemed to erode as he catered to high-flying clients interested only in maximizing returns. Social responsibility took a backseat to the allure of massive profits. Old friends of Andrew's noted that he no longer spoke about community development or philanthropic impact in the same passionate way he once did. When Sarah voiced her concerns, Andrew brushed them off with promises that once the deals were done, they would refocus on their original mission. In truth, a chasm was forming between them, fueled by his growing taste for luxury and her unwavering commitment to meaningful change. During a high-end charity function, Andrew was introduced to Victoria Ellis, a striking socialite and the daughter of an oil magnate. She was used to the same circles Andrew inhabited: private clubs, exclusive events, and global business summits. While Sarah attended fewer of these gatherings, preferring to spend her evenings actually working on charitable projects, Victoria made her presence known. She laughed easily at Andrew's anecdotes, leaned in too close during hushed conversations, and exuded a magnetic blend of sophistication and ambition. Andrew told himself it was purely professional. Victoria's family had connections that could open doors to lucrative overseas ventures. But as the weeks passed, business dinners with Victoria bled into late-night drinks. Andrew felt a pang of guilt each time he glanced at his wedding ring, yet he rationalized it as networking. He refused to acknowledge the emotional line he was crossing, even as he slid further away from the vows he once held dear. Sarah grew increasingly uneasy. She might not have known the details, but the signs were there: Andrew returning home in the early hours of the morning, half-explained outings, the faint trace of unfamiliar perfume on his suit collar. Whenever she confronted him, he turned the tables, accusing her of paranoia and undermining his hard work. The tension in their penthouse grew so thick that even the staff tiptoed around, sensing the frayed edges of their relationship. In her confusion, Sarah recalled the man Andrew used to be, the one who left fancy galas early to volunteer at community centers, the one who made her laugh with silly jokes in the middle of important meetings. She refused to believe he was gone entirely, and so she tried to hold on, hoping that, with enough patience, the Andrew she loved would come back. But Andrew only sunk deeper into the world. Victoria represented a swirl of champagne toasts, whispered power plays, and a promise of limitless opportunities. Late one evening, Sarah decided to surprise him at his office in hopes of rekindling a spark. It was there, through a frosted glass door, that she saw him leaning in far too close to Victoria, their silhouettes betraying an intimacy Sarah had tried so hard not to believe. A rush of pain and betrayal seized her. She left without saying a word, tears streaming down her face. That night, she confronted Andrew with her suspicions. His attempts at denial fell apart under the weight of her evidence, the glimpses, the whispered rumors, the heartbreak she could no longer ignore. Their argument escalated until Sarah, her voice quivering, announced she was leaving. She packed a suitcase with trembling hands as Andrew stood frozen, offering apologies too little, too late. The days that followed were a blur of regret and self-recrimination for Andrew. He told himself he hadn't meant to cheat, that he was simply caught up in the seduction of success and validation. But no excuses could erase the image of Sarah walking away with her suitcase and teary eyes. Suddenly, the penthouse felt like a mausoleum filled with reminders of a life he'd taken for granted. Victoria tried to fill the void, offering him lavish parties and glamorous weekends, yet her world, once so alluring, began to feel hollow. Guilt gnawed at Andrew's conscience, and the high-stakes deals he had once craved felt empty without Sarah's grounded perspective. He caught himself flipping through photos of them hiking in upstate New York, stargazing on a rustic cabin getaway, or simply laughing over a slice of pie at a tiny diner. In those images, he was reminded of the man he used to be, the man Sarah had helped him become. Still, pride kept him from chasing after her immediately. He reasoned that maybe she needed space, or that his apologies would fall on deaf ears. The rationalizations did nothing to temper his growing desperation, especially at night when he lay awake in the penthouse, haunted by the absence of her laughter in those empty rooms. Sarah, meanwhile, moved into a modest Upper West Side apartment. It was a far cry from the luxury she had left behind, but it offered a solace she desperately needed. Throwing herself into her charitable work, she tried to find meaning in the midst of heartbreak. Little did she know, her life was about to shift once again when she discovered she was pregnant, a discovery that would force her to decide whether Andrew deserved to be part of this new chapter or not. Sarah's pregnancy tested every ounce of her resolve. She recalled how she and Andrew once spoke fondly of having children, imagining laughter filling the hallways and weekend picnics in Central Park. Now, that dream was laced with betrayal, and the father of her child was someone she barely recognized. For a time, she kept the pregnancy a secret, confiding only in her closest friend, Monica Price, who had grown up with her in Queens. Monica offered unwavering support, driving Sarah to prenatal appointments and helping her cope with the emotional roller coaster of potential single motherhood. Sarah debated whether to tell Andrew, uncertain if it would complicate an already painful situation. Ultimately, she decided to focus on her baby's well-being first. Yet life has a way of revealing secrets at the least convenient times. A casual acquaintance of Andrew's who worked at the same hospital spotted Sarah in the obstetrics department. Within days, the news reached Andrew. Fear, excitement, and regret coursed through him all at once. He called every mutual friend, desperate to find confirmation. Was the baby truly his? If so, how could he make amends after shattering Sarah's trust? Victoria tried to dissuade him, hinting that Sarah was likely using the pregnancy to manipulate him. But Andrew felt an innate pull he could not ignore. The guilt that once gnawed at him turned into a fierce responsibility to see Sarah, to confirm with his own eyes the life they had created, and to do everything in his power to be involved if she would let him. Andrew's first meeting with Sarah, after learning about the pregnancy, was fraught with tension. He waited outside her apartment building in a black coat on a crisp morning, his heart pounding as he watched passers-by hurry along. When Sarah finally stepped out, the shock on her face was clear. She looked healthier in some ways, perhaps from the glow of pregnancy, but her eyes were guarded. Summoning all his courage, Andrew walked toward her, hands raised in a silent plea for peace. Sarah's instinct was to turn away, but a flicker of empathy stopped her. He apologized, words tumbling out, voice edged with desperation. She allowed him to walk by her side as she headed to a prenatal checkup, though their conversation was halting and full of pregnant pauses. She reluctantly agreed to let him come, with a warning that this did not mean she forgave him. Inside the ultrasound room, Andrew's gaze fixed on the screen, displaying a tiny heartbeat. The rhythmic pulsing struck him like a tidal wave of awe and responsibility. For a moment, he forgot everything: the betrayal, the arguments, Victoria's intrusion. All that mattered was this fragile new life. When he reached out to hold Sarah's hand, she didn't pull away, but her eyes were rimmed with tears. The appointment ended with a promise on Andrew's part to be there for both of them, and a lingering uncertainty in Sarah's mind about whether she could truly trust him again. Over the subsequent weeks, Andrew tried to compensate for his betrayal through financial gestures and emotional support. He had groceries and prenatal vitamins delivered to Sarah's apartment, arranged for a baby boutique to send catalogues of cribs and strollers, and offered to cover all medical expenses. While Sarah appreciated the concern, she also felt suffocated. This was the kind of extravagance that had driven them apart in the first place. Still, she allowed Andrew to attend certain checkups, acknowledging that he had a right to be involved in the baby's life. Their interactions remained strained. They were polite, even civil, but a wall of unspoken pain hovered between them. Whenever Andrew tried to express remorse, Sarah responded with a guarded nod, not wanting to let him too close, too quickly. His split with Victoria was messy and public, giving the tabloids fresh material to feast on. Victoria, enraged by Andrew's renewed focus on Sarah, threatened to unveil secrets about Harrington Ventures' dealings. Andrew found himself battling gossip headlines that painted him as a shameless philanderer. Yet none of it mattered to him as much as Sarah's opinion. He was desperate for a second chance, but aware that he didn't deserve quick forgiveness. In private, Andrew began to dismantle the life he had built with Victoria. He distanced himself from clients who only cared about profits at any moral cost. His circle of sycophants shrank, replaced by a small group of colleagues who respected his pivot back toward integrity. But whether Sarah believed this transformation was genuine remained the great unknown. Andrew's reckoning arrived in the form of a ruthless public relations offensive by Victoria. She leaked rumors to business blogs and gossip pages, alleging that Andrew had used her connections and then discarded her. Photographs of them at private events circulated, fueling speculation that Andrew was involved in more than one affair. Hashtags like #HarringtonScandal and #MillionaireCheater trended on social media for days. Investors wavered, unsure if Andrew's personal dramas signaled deeper issues within Harrington Ventures. Colleagues questioned whether his sudden philanthropic pivot was damage control or sincere change. Meanwhile, Sarah watched from her apartment in silent turmoil. She worried about what this might mean for the stability of Andrew's financial obligations to their child, not because she wanted his money, but because these controversies could strip him of the influence and resources he was promising to devote to the baby's future. Her father, Robert Bennett, visited one afternoon. He expressed concern about Andrew's ability to be a dependable partner or father, yet he also recognized Andrew's attempts at atonement, his presence at the doctor's visits, his refusal to publicly slander Sarah, and his willingness to own up to his transgressions. After a heart-to-heart, Robert advised Sarah to follow her instincts. If Andrew was sincere, it might be worth allowing him a path back. If he wasn't, then at least she would know she tried. That evening, Sarah scrolled through photos of happier times, the simple joys, the quiet dinners at small diners, the enthusiastic discussions about building a better world. Somewhere underneath the scandal and betrayal, she sensed Andrew still carried that spark of goodness. The question was whether it was strong enough to overcome the wreckage he had created. In a move that surprised everyone, Andrew held a press conference to address the rumors. He stood before a sea of reporters, dressed in a subdued navy suit, a stark contrast to his usual extravagant style. Instead of denying everything or launching counterattacks, he admitted to personal failings. "I've made grave mistakes," he began, voice unsteady. "I lost sight of the values I once held dear, and in the process, I hurt people who trusted me." He paused, breathing deeply. "I'm not here to shift blame or make excuses. I'm here to acknowledge my faults and to try and rebuild with honesty and humility." He offered no salacious details, nor did he mention Sarah's pregnancy, protecting her privacy and that of their unborn child. Initially, the press seemed poised to pounce on any sign of weakness, but Andrew's earnest confession left them with little ammo. It was neither a denial nor a typical PR smokescreen. While some reporters still questioned his motives, many lauded his candor, even if only cautiously. Victoria's smear campaign was suddenly deflated. With Andrew owning up to his missteps, the tabloids had no fresh fuel to stoke the fire. Harrington Ventures board members, watching the press conference, breathed a bit easier. Clients began sending messages of tentative support, acknowledging that accountability was a rare commodity in their world. Sarah watched from the couch in her apartment, tears prickling her eyes. She didn't know if Andrew's public confession would fix anything, but for the first time in months, she believed he might genuinely be trying to become a better man, not just for the cameras, but also for himself and for their child. The press conference marked a turning point for Andrew. With public speculation cooling, he refocused on his personal life with renewed urgency. He found a parenting class in Midtown and called Sarah, voice trembling, asking if he could attend. Unsure of her own feelings, Sarah reluctantly agreed. On the day of the class, Andrew arrived early, wearing a casual sweater instead of his usual tailored suits. He sat beside Sarah, fumbling with the plastic baby doll used for demonstrations. Though awkward at first, he paid close attention, asked questions, and followed the instructor's advice meticulously. Sarah observed him, recalling the times he had once dismissed ordinary responsibilities. Now, he seemed genuinely eager to learn how to swaddle, change diapers, and soothe a crying infant. After class, they walked together to the subway. Andrew gingerly brought up the idea of being present at future appointments and tried to gauge Sarah's comfort level. She responded that she wouldn't shut him out, but neither was she ready to erase what he had done. He nodded, accepting the conditions. The moment felt strangely normal, like a couple navigating everyday challenges, a stark contrast to the heightened drama of the past few months. Nonetheless, the specter of mistrust still lingered. Each time Andrew's phone buzzed, Sarah tensed, wondering if Victoria was on the other end. Every so often, she caught Andrew's worried gaze, as if expecting she might disappear at any moment. Despite these undercurrents, they found a delicate equilibrium, each step a test of their resolve to put the baby first. Seeking professional advice, Andrew and Sarah scheduled a meeting with Dr. Emily Wilson, an old friend of Sarah's who had recently become an obstetrician at a top New York hospital. Emily offered more than medical expertise. She provided a compassionate ear that neither judged nor excused Andrew's actions. During a routine checkup, Emily gently asked Sarah how she was coping. Sarah admitted she was scared of raising a child alone, of trusting Andrew again, of making a mistake that would hurt her baby. Emily encouraged her to focus on the present. Ultimately, it's your decision whether Andrew is a part of your life beyond fatherhood, Emily said. But if he's truly changing, maybe there's room for that. Andrew, waiting just outside the examination room, overheard snippets of the conversation. His heart clenched at Sarah's fears. For the first time, he confronted the depth of the wounds he had inflicted. His betrayal wasn't merely a mistake, it was a violation that had shaken Sarah's self-worth and stability. Determined to prove his sincerity, Andrew stepped in to help in any way Sarah would allow. He set aside more time for her, rearranged business appointments, and turned down lucrative but ethically questionable partnerships at Harrington Ventures. Slowly, news of his philanthropic pivot began to reach potential investors who shared those values. Though the company lost a few major clients, Andrew felt a sense of relief, aligning the business with the mission he had once envisioned. It was a long overdue course correction that reminded him why he started Harrington Ventures in the first place. Yet, just when things seemed to be stabilizing, life dealt another blow. During her third trimester, Sarah started experiencing severe headaches and noticed swelling in her hands and feet. Fearing preeclampsia, Emily ordered immediate tests. The diagnosis was alarming. Sarah's blood pressure was dangerously high, risking both her life and the baby's if not managed carefully. She was placed on bed rest, restricted from stress-inducing activities. Andrew responded by practically moving into Sarah's modest apartment. He set up a small workstation in the living room and devoted himself to her care. Gone were the nights at exclusive clubs or glamorous fundraisers. Instead, he measured Sarah's blood pressure multiple times a day, cooked low-sodium meals, and recorded every detail for Emily to review. Monica Price and a few other close friends offered a rotating schedule of support, but Andrew insisted he could handle most of it. Sarah found herself torn. Having Andrew around was comforting, an undeniable source of relief when she needed help, even sitting up or monitoring her symptoms. At the same time, she struggled with the emotional scars of his infidelity. Could she allow him back into her heart so easily? Late at night, she'd find herself awake, staring at the ceiling, acutely aware of Andrew in the next room, quietly tapping on his laptop as he wrapped up a day's work. One evening, a particularly sharp pain struck Sarah, and she burst into tears out of both discomfort and fear. Andrew rushed over, took her hand, and whispered reassurances until the pain subsided. In that vulnerable moment, the wall between them weakened. Sarah allowed herself to lean on him, if only for the baby's sake. And Andrew, feeling the warmth of her acceptance, vowed silently never to betray that trust again. The final weeks of Sarah's pregnancy turned into a delicate dance between hope and anxiety. On strict bed rest, she had plenty of time to confront her emotions. Andrew, for his part, settled into a surprisingly nurturing role. He tended to her every need, from preparing small meals to helping her with gentle stretches approved by Emily. In the stillness of those days, they often found themselves really talking about how they ended up on this perilous path. One evening, Sarah sat propped against pillows while Andrew thumbed through a parenting book. His voice trembled as he apologized once more, this time detailing his regrets with stark honesty. He spoke of how he craved validation from wealthy peers, of how he let ambition corrode his moral compass, and of how he'd blinded himself to Sarah's pain. Sarah listened, tears welling in her eyes, and admitted her own regrets. Perhaps she had placed him on too high a pedestal, expecting him never to falter. Cautious as they were, these conversations planted seeds of reconciliation. They talked about attending couples therapy once the baby was born. They acknowledged that trust is hard to rebuild and that forgiveness couldn't be rushed. Yet they also recalled the values that had once bonded them, the desire to help communities, the commitment to honest work, and the dream of building a family founded on more than just material wealth. In the midst of this fragile peace, they readied themselves for the baby's arrival. Andrew assembled a crib in the small second bedroom, adorning it with neutral-colored sheets and a mobile that played soft lullabies. Sarah folded tiny clothes and arranged them in drawers, forcing herself to rest between tasks. Each gesture was tinged with the knowledge that their future hinged on the delicate balance of second chances. Life, however, has a way of testing even the most steadfast plans. Late one night, Sarah awoke to a searing pain and blurred vision, classic signs that her blood pressure was spiking dangerously. Andrew leaped out of bed, heart pounding, and phoned Dr. Emily Wilson, who instructed him to rush Sarah to the hospital. Speeding through the quiet Manhattan streets, Andrew gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled fear, occasionally glancing at Sarah slumped in the passenger seat. Flashes of regret coursed through him, every poor decision magnified by the thought that he might lose her and the baby before he could truly make amends. At the hospital, the medical team confirmed the severity of Sarah's condition. An emergency C-section was the best chance for both mother and child. Andrew paced the stark waiting area, panic swirling in his mind. All the money, influence and status he once clung to felt worthless if he couldn't protect the two lives that mattered most. Dr. Wilson finally emerged, her expression grim but professional. She allowed Andrew to change into scrubs and join Sarah in the operating room. The sterile lights and frantic beeping of monitors formed the backdrop to a moment of profound intimacy. Andrew held Sarah's hand, whispering his love, his regrets, and his promises. She managed a weak smile, meeting his gaze with silent resolve. Within the hour, the wail of a newborn filled the room, a cry that symbolized both a new life and a potential new chapter for them. Andrew's eyes flooded with tears at the sight of his daughter so small, wrapped in a pristine white blanket. Sarah, still groggy from the anesthesia, breathed a sigh of relief as she reached out to touch the baby's tiny fingers. They named her Lily, after Sarah's favorite flower. For one pristine moment, the chaos of their past fell away, yet reality set in quickly. Lily was premature and required a brief stay in the neonatal intensive care unit. Sarah's own recovery was complicated by her fluctuating blood pressure. Each day, Andrew split his time between Sarah's room and the NICU, a place tinged with the hum of incubators and hushed medical instructions. In those quiet hours by Lily's bedside, Andrew felt the full weight of parenthood. He would place his hand gently inside the incubator, marveling at her impossibly small fingers curling around his. He also found himself in the uncomfortable position of answering to the Harrington family. James and Margaret visited with concerned faces, their once aloof demeanor replaced by genuine worry. Sarah's parents, Robert and Linda, did the same, ensuring Sarah had the emotional support she needed. Even Monica Price came by daily, greeting Andrew with a nod of polite caution. Everyone recognized that the baby's precarious condition transcended any past grudges, at least for the moment. In the midst of these hospital vigils, Andrew's perspective on life shifted irrevocably. He realized how fragile happiness could be, how quickly everything could unravel. He found himself praying an act he hadn't done since childhood, silently begging for Lily's health and for a chance to rectify his mistakes. With each day that Lily grew stronger, Andrew felt a cautious optimism take root in his chest. Eventually, Sarah was discharged, though Lily needed a few more days under medical supervision. Andrew set up everything back at Sarah's apartment, determined to make her transition easier. He helped her navigate postpartum instructions, check her blood pressure regularly, and rest as much as possible. They had never been so physically close in months. Yet this time, intimacy wasn't about romance. It was about survival, healing, and the unspoken mutual desire to be there for Lily. Differences still surfaced, moments where Sarah recalled his betrayal and bristled when Andrew tried to comfort her. But they found ways to talk it out, or at least set tensions aside for Lily's sake. When their daughter was finally released from the NICU, Andrew drove Sarah to the hospital with a car seat securely installed, triple-checking every strap. His hands trembled as he carried Lily out of the hospital for the first time, placing her carefully in the car seat with Sarah's watchful eyes on him. The short drive back felt like a milestone, the city lights flashing by as if to welcome Lily into a new reality. Once inside the apartment, they introduced Lily to her nursery, a simple, cozy room decorated with soft pastel colors and a mobile of dancing stars. Sarah rested on the couch, her face a mixture of exhaustion and relief, while Andrew gently laid Lily in her crib. He turned to Sarah, taking her hand. A year ago, he would have pictured this moment in a sprawling penthouse with staff on call. Now he realized that love thrived in the small, heartfelt corners of life, not in marble floors or sky-high views. The subsequent days were filled with sleepless nights and endless feedings. Lily's soft cries woke them at odd hours, and they took turns comforting her. Andrew absorbed each moment with a sense of gratitude, cherishing the chance to change diapers and rock his daughter to sleep. Sarah was cautious in her trust, but she couldn't deny the comfort of having a partner to shoulder the workload. Gradually, conversations about their relationship began to resurface, this time with a hint of hope. They agreed to couples counseling, unwilling to sweep past hurts under the rug. Their first session was tense, both grappling with unresolved anger and guilt. Andrew spoke about his destructive quest for validation, his susceptibility to flattery, and how he had neglected Sarah's emotional needs. Sarah recounted how alone she felt, especially when she had warned him about Victoria, only to be dismissed and ridiculed. The therapist guided them to see that while Andrew's actions were undeniably damaging, their marriage might still recover if they both committed to honesty and empathy. They left the session drained, but also united in a shared resolve to keep trying. Small gestures became symbolic, Andrew bringing Sarah tea before she even asked, Sarah inviting Andrew's parents for a low-key dinner so they could see Lily's progress, and Andrew stepping away from high-stake business deals that clashed with his newfound priorities. As Lily gained weight and started to coo in recognition of their faces, Andrew and Sarah found glimmers of the partnership they once had. It was neither easy nor perfect, but it felt real, based not on illusions of grandeur, but on the raw, unfiltered reality of building a family. News of Andrew's transformations trickled through his professional network, while some high-powered individuals scoffed at his renewed dedication to philanthropy. Others admired it. A handful of ethically minded investors reached out to Harrington Ventures, intrigued by the possibility of profitable but socially responsible endeavors. This alignment of business success with personal values reignited Andrew's passion for work in a way that chasing purely profit-driven deals never had. With finances somewhat stabilized, Andrew was free to spend more time with Sarah and Lily. Afternoons found him reading books on newborn care or helping Sarah tidy up the nursery. Even simple activities like folding Lily's tiny clothes became a shared moment of tenderness. Every so often, Sarah would catch him smiling down at Lily, eyes alight with wonder, and remember the early days of their relationship when idealism still trumped wealth and influence. Not everyone was entirely convinced. Victoria remained a looming question mark, occasionally popping up in social circles with insinuations that Andrew's moral rebirth was little more than a PR stunt. But as her bitterness found fewer sympathetic ears, she quietly faded from the limelight. Monica Price, fiercely protective of Sarah, kept a watchful eye but admitted Andrew was making an honest effort. At times, Sarah still wrestled with pangs of doubt. She feared letting her guard down only to be hurt again. But each day that Andrew remained consistent in his actions, attending counseling, contributing to the household, prioritizing Lily, chipped away at her reservations. Their progress was fragile but tangible, like a carefully mended vase that still held the power to hold water. Months slipped by. Lily grew stronger and more alert, eventually giggling at silly faces Andrew made. He reveled in fatherhood, celebrating each tiny milestone from her first babbles to her attempt at rolling over. In those moments, Sarah saw a glimpse of the Andrew she had fallen in love with, earnest, devoted, and full of wonder at life's simplest joys. Therapy sessions evolved from dissecting past traumas to envisioning a future together. They discussed how to balance Andrew's business pursuits with Sarah's charitable ambitions. They created boundaries to ensure neither felt overshadowed by the other's obligations. Andrew hesitantly suggested one day moving into a more family-friendly home, maybe not the ostentatious penthouse, but somewhere with a little yard for Lily to play in. Sarah was open to the idea, but only after they had fully re-established trust. Their families took note of the changing dynamic. Robert Bennett, once wary, acknowledged Andrew's dedication during a casual dinner where he saw Andrew skillfully juggle cooking and tending to a fussing Lily. Margaret Harrington, initially frosty to Sarah, showed unexpected softness when she visited and found Sarah reading bedtime stories to Lily. She seemed almost bewildered at how different yet endearing Andrew's new lifestyle was compared to the glittering soirees she was used to hosting. Amid these subtle triumphs, there were still tense days. Business emergencies, sleepless nights with Lily, and the inevitable resurfacing of painful memories tested their fragile truce. But each challenge they weathered seemed to add another stitch to the tapestry of their renewed relationship, binding them closer in shared purpose. On Lily's first birthday, they decided to hold a modest gathering in Sarah's apartment by choice. Andrew's penthouse remained empty, a silent testament to his old life. Family and a few close friends crowded into the small living room, balloons bobbing near the ceiling. Lily, seated in a high chair, stared curiously at the single candle on her tiny cake. She smashed her chubby hands into the frosting, eliciting laughter from all sides. Margaret Harrington, who had arrived in a subtly elegant dress, looked slightly out of her comfort zone amid the casual setting. Yet as Lily squealed with delight, something in Margaret's demeanor softened. James Harrington, stoic as ever, quietly took Andrew aside to say, "I'm proud of you, not just for turning your business around, but for this," gesturing at Lily and Sarah. Sarah's parents were overjoyed, snapping photographs of Lily's every move. Monica Price teased Andrew for wearing an apron that said #OneDad. Friends they had met through their philanthropic work mingled with Andrew's more business-oriented acquaintances. Remarkably, the atmosphere was warm and free of the pretense that often weighed down Harrington events. As the night wound down and guests trickled out, Andrew and Sarah found themselves sitting on the floor, Lily babbling between them. The apartment was strewn with wrapping paper, half-eaten cake, and an array of baby toys. They locked eyes, sharing a look of gratitude that words could never capture. Andrew leaned in, pressed a gentle kiss to Sarah's temple, and whispered, "Thank you for letting me be a part of this." With tears glistening, Sarah reached out to caress Lily's soft hair. In that serene moment, they both understood that love is not about perfection, it's about redemption, choices, and the willingness to try again when everything seems lost. A year after Lily's birth, the rhythms of Andrew and Sarah's life had settled into something both comforting and new, an everyday serenity they could scarcely have envisioned during their darkest days. Gone were the flashbulb-spangled nights of lavish penthouse parties or the stinging echoes of betrayal. In their place bloomed a quieter routine, shaped by bottles, diaper changes, and a young family learning to navigate the world together. Andrew still steered Harrington Ventures, but he no longer treated his business like an all-consuming empire. Much to his own surprise, he actually loved the balance he had found. In the early mornings, he would rise to quietly answer emails before the rest of the household stirred. Then he'd take Lily in his arms when she woke, giving Sarah an extra half-hour to sleep. This simple act of fatherhood, feeling Lily's small head nestle against his chest, brought a level of fulfillment that no boardroom victory ever could. Sarah, too, was experiencing a personal renaissance. Her brush with preeclampsia had ignited a deep passion for advocating maternal and infant health. She volunteered with local non-profits in the city, sharing her story to highlight the challenges women can face during pregnancy. She found herself invited to speak at community centers, sometimes accompanied by Andrew, who would watch proudly from the front row, Lily perched on his lap. Where once they had struggled to find common ground in their professional goals, they now discovered an easy partnership. Andrew used his network to assist these non-profits, while Sarah's first-hand experiences lent an authentic, compassionate edge to their cause. They still lived in Sarah's cozy apartment. Although Andrew's penthouse remained his property, too complicated to sell and too painful to inhabit, it stood mostly empty, a silent reminder of the life he had left behind. Occasionally, Andrew would feel a pang of guilt when he thought of it, recalling the nights he spent there with Victoria. Yet those memories were slowly overshadowed by the gentler tapestry of his new life. Lily's first smile, the sound of Sarah humming lullabies during late-night feedings, the shy way she sometimes let him hold her after a particularly stressful day. Therapy continued to be a vital part of their journey. They sat on a comfortable leather sofa in a neutral-toned counseling office every other week, the same place where they had once hashed out the most painful truths of Andrew's infidelity. Over time, these sessions transitioned from urgent crisis management to more subtle tune-ups of communication. They discussed parenting strategies, personal boundaries, and strategies to maintain the newfound trust they had worked so hard to rebuild. Their therapist often remarked on how rare it was for couples to survive such a devastating blow and emerge even stronger, but in truth, Andrew and Sarah knew the journey wasn't about emerging unscathed. It was about living with their scars, hand in hand, and using those scars to build a better foundation. Meanwhile, Lily's growth served as a symbol of their own resilience. She was now toddling around the apartment, clutching onto furniture for stability. Her big milestone that month was learning to say Mama and Dada, though her excited babbling sometimes resulted in adorable near words that made both parents laugh. One afternoon, Andrew knelt down to help her take a few wobbly steps while Sarah snapped photos on her phone. The squeals of joy echoing in their small living room felt like the purest soundtrack of redemption. As Lily's first birthday approached, they decided to host the celebration in Sarah's apartment by choice. It was a reflection of their new values, modest, heartfelt, and inclusive. The day of the party was warm and bright, sunlight streaming in through the windows. Multicolored balloons bobbed near the ceiling, and a small cluster of friends and family squeezed into the living room. Margaret Harrington arrived in a casual dress, still unaccustomed to the tight quarters, but determined to be a part of her granddaughter's special day. James Harrington ambled in behind her, a small stuffed bear, clutched somewhat awkwardly in his large hand a gift he had picked out himself. On the other side of the room, Robert and Linda Bennett beamed with pride, snapping pictures of Lily, who was perched in her high chair, staring wide-eyed at the single candle on a miniature cake. Monica Price, Sarah's childhood friend, directed the festivities with bossy good humor, ensuring everyone had a slice of cake and a seat. When Lily smashed her tiny hands into the frosting, squeals of laughter broke out among the guests. For a moment, Andrew stood to the side, taking in the scene, the swirl of loved ones, the blur of bright balloons, the messy triumph of Lily's first birthday. He thought about how different this gathering was from the glittering galas of the Harrington estate, and how infinitely more meaningful it felt. At one point during the celebration, James drew Andrew aside. The once imposing real estate mogul looked slightly smaller, as though time and introspection had gentled his bearing. "Son," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion, "I'm proud of you. Not just for the direction you've taken at Harrington Ventures, but for putting family first." Andrew swallowed hard, nodding in acknowledgement. It was a simple sentence, but it carried more weight than any business accolade could. As the night wound down and the last slice of cake was consumed, the living room cleared out. Wrapping paper, ribbons, and half-inflated balloons lay scattered on the floor. Lily was yawning in Sarah's arms, blinking sleepily against the soft glow of the lamp. Andrew gathered a few plates to bring into the kitchen, but Sarah stopped him gently. "Leave it for tomorrow," she murmured, heading toward Lily's nursery. Once Lily was tucked in and the apartment felt still, Andrew and Sarah found themselves alone in the living room. They sank onto the couch, side by side. The exhaustion of the day clung to them, but so did an undeniable warmth. Andrew slowly reached for Sarah's hand, lacing his fingers through hers. She didn't pull away. After a few moments of comfortable silence, she rested her head on his shoulder. "I never thought we'd get here," she admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Andrew turned to look at her, love and gratitude written plainly across his face. "Me neither," he answered, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "But I'm so grateful we made it." In that moment, the entire past, his betrayal, her heartbreak, the sleepless nights in the hospital, the tense therapy sessions settled like dust on a windowsill, still visible but no longer the forefront of their lives. What took center stage was a newly forged bond, delicate but strong, rooted in the profound honesty they had learned through pain. A few days later, Andrew suggested they revisit the little diner in Queens, where they used to share late-night slices of pie during their college days. Sarah hesitated, worrying about Lily's nap schedule, but eventually agreed. Together, they buckled Lily into her car seat and drove across town, passing skyscrapers and bustling sidewalks. The neon sign of the diner flickered in the twilight, just as it had all those years ago. Sliding into the same booth, the three of them drew curious looks from the regulars. Lily was all wide eyes and grabbing hands, curious about the laminated menu. Andrew and Sarah smiled sheepishly at each other. They ordered 2 slices of apple pie, an old favorite, and took turns feeding Lily small spoonfuls of mashed fruit. The sweetness of the pie mingled with memories of who they once were and the promise of who they were becoming. In that simple booth, Andrew felt his heart swell with an unaccustomed peace. He watched Sarah gaze adoringly at their daughter, then steal a glance at him with a look that was no longer marred by sadness. He found her hand beneath the table, and their fingers interlocked, warm, familiar, and safe. There, in the heart of Queens, with neon lights buzzing and plates clinking in the background, they finally let themselves believe in a future they would create together, redeemed, reshaped, and infinitely precious. They had come a long way from the betrayals and heartbreak that once threatened to tear them apart. Each moment spent rebuilding trust was like adding another stitch to a tapestry of second chances. Their renewed bond, although hard-won, was richer for having been tested. And as Lily giggled in Sarah's arms, Andrew knew that sometimes the greatest fortune in life wasn't measured in bank accounts or penthouse views, but in the small, loving moments shared around a simple diner table, a family brought together by both tragedy and grace, determined to cherish every moment they had been given. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of redemption, heartbreak, and the power of second chances. Andrew and Sarah's story is a testament to the resilience of love, even in the face of betrayal, and a reminder that sometimes life's most valuable lessons come wrapped in painful experiences. Through their trials, they learned that honesty, humility, and genuine effort can pave the way to healing wounds once thought irreparable. If this tale resonated with you, please consider supporting our channel by liking this video, sharing it with friends who love dramatic real-life fiction, and subscribing to stay updated on future stories. Your engagement means the world to us and helps us continue creating content that explores the complexities of love, trust, and the human heart. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to sharing more powerful stories with you soon.